Hello class, welcome to Algebra Lesson 9-4, which is all about solving quadratic equations by using square roots. By the end of this lesson, you should be able to solve quadratic equations by taking square roots. Alright, so let's jump into example 1, where we solve equations of the form x squared equals a number. Okay, so let's look at the very top one. What are the solutions of the equation x squared equals 25? So if I asked you, what number squared equals 25, a lot of you would probably be able to spout off the number 5. And you wouldn't think of anything else, you'd move on to the next problem. But what if I told you 5 isn't the only number that you can multiply by itself to get to 25? Some of you might remember that 5 squared equals 25, but also if I do negative 5 times negative 5, I end up at a positive 25. If you're someone checking it on your calculator, when you type it in like this, your calculator is going to give you an incorrect answer. Remember that whenever you square a negative number on your calculator, you have to do parentheses around the negative, so it knows that the negative is also squared. Okay, so because of this, because of the fact that there are two answers, let's think about how that impacts if we were to solve equations with square roots. So we have x squared equals 25. The opposite of a square is a square root. So what I do is I take the square root of both sides. Okay, this is not really anything new so far. So when I do the square root, on the left side, the square and the square root cancel, and I'm left with x equals. And then on the right-hand side, I have the square root of 25, but that would only give me the number 5 when there are really two answers. So we put something in front of the square root that some of you have maybe seen before. It's called plus minus. So it looks something like this. It's a plus sign and a minus sign. And what that means is the answer can be a positive 5 or a negative 5. And that's a faster way of writing rather than just saying x equals 5, x equals negative 5. And we're going to start using this plus minus symbol more and more. Okay, so I highly recommend start to get used to it. And your online book has this symbol built in along the bottom for you to help save time with typing in answers. This means that you can type in answers all at once rather than typing in 5 and negative 5. You can hit this key and then hit 5, and then you're done with the problem. Okay, let's try the next problem. We have x squared equals a negative 4. Now, this kind of problem, anytime you have a square, any number times itself means that I can't end up at a negative 4. So, because, right, we tested that. Negative 5 times negative 5 is positive 25. If I did a negative 2 times the negative 2, that's positive 4. That means that anytime you have a number squared equal to a negative number, your answer is no solution. Okay, so anytime you have something squared equals negative 4. So, and what I mean by something squared, I mean literally just like x squared, y squared, whatever variable squared. If you have a number in front of this, that changes the story. This only applies to x squared, or whatever variable squared, equals a negative. That's a no solution. Alright, and then let's jump down to the last kind of example that we have on this page. We have, what are the solutions to the equation x squared equals 50? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to square root both sides. And whenever I do that square root with the number, I'm automatically going to put plus minus in front of it. Some of you are going to be tempted to just leave it at x equals plus minus the square root of 50. But remember, I taught you how to break up the square root of 50. We don't just get to stop there. We have to simplify our radicals. So 50 is the same as 25 times 2. 25 as the square root, that's just 5, and 2. So my final answer for this problem, if my pen will load, it's being a little glitchy tonight, my answer would be x equals the positive version of 5 square root of 2 and the negative version of 5 square roots of 2. So that would be my answer. All right. Now I want you to try this problem on your own. What are the solutions of the equation x squared equals 169? Good luck. All right, for this problem, hopefully you determined that your answer could be either a positive 13 or a negative 13. If you have questions about that, first check the work that I have shown here, but I'm also happy to help you and explain that to you in another way. All right, I want you to try one more. What are the solutions of the equation x squared equals negative 49? Good luck. All right, for this problem, hopefully you realized I had an x squared equals a negative number, and it doesn't matter what that negative number is. It matters that it's negative, and that means it's a no solution. All right, let's jump into example 2. How to solve equations of the form a number times x squared equals a number. So how can you use factoring to solve 7x squared equals 112? Now this might look scary, but really it's not too bad. It's very similar to what we just did. So I have 7 times x squared equals 112. My first step is going to be to get that x squared all by itself. So I do that by dividing both sides by 7. I have x squared equals 112 divided by 7. And 112 divided by 7 is a really nice number to work with. It's a 16. So now I do just like what I did on the last slide, or in the last example. I take the square root of both sides, and of course I do the positive and negative version. And I'm left with x equals the positive version of 4 and the negative version of 4. Okay, so that would be my answer, positive or negative 4. Why don't you go ahead and try this problem on your own? Good luck. All right, for this question, hopefully you ended up at x equals the positive version of 5 or x equals the negative version of 5. I did that by dividing 5 from both sides, and then I took the square root, and I made sure to check for the positive and negative version of the number. Okay, so that's how I got x equals plus or minus 5. Example 3, we're going to increase the difficulty ever so slightly for this problem. You can see I have in parentheses the difference of 1 and 3x squared minus 63 equals 0. Okay, so my first step is I want it to kind of look like what I've already worked with. So that means, opposite of what I've been telling you this chapter, we're actually going to not have it equal 0 anymore. I'm going to add 63 to both sides. Because if you check it out, I want it to equal a number. Okay, that's what this example is all about. So then I'm left with 1 minus 3x. That quantity squared equals 63. From there, how do I undo that square? What have we been doing all night? We have been doing the square root. So if I square root the left side, I'm left with 1 minus 3x equals, and then on the right side, the positive and negative version of 63. Okay, and before I move on and start moving more things from one side to the other, I'm going to go off on the side here and do what we do best, and that is simplify that radical. So the square root of 63, that is the same as 9 times 7. And the square root of 9 is a lovely number. It is the number 3. So I'm going to write 3 in front of that square root of 7. Okay, so I'm going to rewrite this problem ever so slightly, just so it's in simplest form already. Then I'm going to start doing my solving equations just like we've been practicing, honestly, all year. I want to get x by itself. So the first thing I'm going to do that is subtract that 1 from both sides. So I still have a negative 3x on the left-hand side. And then you might be wondering, what order do we write all of these numbers? So the best practice is actually to write the number without the square root first, and then, or before, I should say, write the number that's not immediately following that plus or minus. That goes first. So in this case, that's the negative 1. It's not grouped with that plus or minus. So That plus or minus gets treated like it's glued to this term, okay? That plus or minus needs to stay with that 3 square root of 7. It cannot move to be in front of that negative 1. Okay? All right, so now that I have that all lined up and I want to get x all by itself, I still have that negative 3 being multiplied with the x, so I'm going to divide both sides by a negative 3. Divide both sides by a negative 3. All right, so I'm left with x equals negative 1 plus or minus the 3 square root of 7 all over negative 3. And that's what I would type into my online book for an answer. This is where that plus or minus key is going to be really nice, because if you don't use it, you have to type in negative 1 plus 3 square root of 7 over negative 3, comma, negative 1 minus 3 square root of 7 over negative 3. So that plus or minus key is going to be your new best friend for speeding up your homework, okay? Make sure you use it. Don't be afraid of that key. Let's look at one question. This is the last question you guys will solve on your own, and then I'll do one more example. Go ahead and solve this equation. 3x squared plus 17 equals 209. Good luck. All right, for this problem, hopefully you ended up with x equals a positive 8 or x equals a negative 8. Or maybe you were brave and used x equals plus or minus 8. The way I got that was, first I subtracted 17 from both sides, then I divided both sides by 3, took the square root of that number, and that is how I ended up at that 8. If you have questions about that, please be sure to first check my work, and second, ask me for some help. Okay, I'm happy to help you. This is why I signed up to be a teacher. I enjoy helping you. All right, last example. Let's do a real world problem. We have the area of a newspaper page. Okay, pretend it's open, and I realize that some of you have maybe never actually opened a newspaper because they're not as common as they once were. But hopefully you know what newspaper looks like and have the general idea. If you don't, it's a big sheet of paper. Go with that. So the area of a newspaper page opened up is about 630.92 square inches. Determine the length and the width of the page if its length is 1.22 times its width. Step 1, draw a picture. Fun fact, if you don't like drawing pictures, I recommend you start liking it, because next year when you're in geometry with me, guess what I'm going to make you do? Draw pictures. All right, so determine the length and the width. The only information we have is the area, which, I did a little rectangle for you. It's not perfect, but it doesn't have to be. And I labeled the inside area with 630.92. Then I have a length and a width. I don't know what my width is, so that's where I'm going to put my variable. I'm going to use W. If you want to use X, go for it. If you want to use the first letter of your name, go for it. Doesn't matter. The length, I know it's related to the width, and the way it's related to the width is that it's 1.22 times the width. So I'm going to write 1.22 W. And how do you find the area of a rectangle? This is the point in the year where sometimes students are so overwhelmed by all of the symbols that you're learning that you forget some of the basics. So just a reminder, the area of a rectangle is length times width. So that means, yes, we are going to multiply these two numbers together. So 1.22 W times W, 1.22 W squared. And we know that equals the area, which, fun fact, we know that number. Funny how that works. Let's solve it, just like we've been practicing. This looks just like our second example from tonight. You have a number times a variable squared equals a number. We are going to start by dividing both sides by that. 1.22 divide by 1.22. And you know what? It's real world numbers. So you know what it's not going to be? A nice number. So it's going to be a big long decimal, and you're probably going to be like, Ms. Johnson, what do I do? Do I round? Yes, the answer is you cut it off and you round. Okay? So I picked 2 decimal places. If you want to pick 4, go for it. I recommend don't go less than 2. It's just good practice as you move further and further into math to be as accurate as possible. So recommend at least 2 decimal places. All right, then we're back to what we did in example 1. We have a variable squared equals a number. We know how to do this. Square root. W equals the square root of 517.15. But I'm not going to be one of those people that forgets the plus or minus. Okay, so then we have W equals, if I do the square root of 517, I get 22.74 inches. Okay, so I followed exactly what we've done in all of the examples up to now, except for I drew a picture because, it's fun. But let's think about this answer. The width is a positive 22.74 inches. Does that answer make sense? Can the width be 22.74 inches? Yeah. So I know that answer could be correct. But I also know that a newspaper doesn't have two widths. It has a length and a width. And if I think about this second one right here, can the width be a negative 22.74 inches? In this case, no. We can't have any distance, any measurement like this be negative. Okay, just like you can't have negative time. So when you're doing these real world problems, you want to think about, is your answer realistic? So when you're doing these problems for your homework, you get to throw out that negative answer, and your answer will be the positive version of the number that you solved for. Now, the last thing I'll say about this. There are things I teach you in math class that I say are true for now. This is one of those things. As you move further and further into math and or sciences, you will find out that what I said right here with these answers is not always true. But for now, this is the truth, okay? You get to throw out that negative answer. All right, if you have questions about that, please don't hesitate to ask. I am more than happy to help you. All right, so here's the last slide with the concept summary. If you have any questions about something I said in this video, please don't hesitate to ask. I am happy to help you. Have a great day.